Welcome. I'm Professor Muqtedar Khan, and today I'm going to talk to you about the American Constitution and American foreign policy. The United States government, or the structure of the US government, which is based on the US Constitution, is considered that it is one of the geniuses of the US polity, its political and economic system. The key to the US government is essentially division of powers. So the United States government is divided into three branches. Some people say three equal branches. So even though they are not exactly equal in their powers, the executive, which is headed by the president, the Congress, which is bicameral or composed of the US House of Representatives and the Senate, and then the judiciary, or the US Supreme Court. So according to the US Congress, the president has some powers, the Congress has some powers, the judiciary has some powers, and they can check upon each other. So the idea is that American government can never become tyrannical or dictatorial because no branch of government has absolute power or controls all elements of state power, and therefore because the government is divided, they act in ways in which they can check upon each other. So how does this division of powers impact on American foreign policy? So it's very interesting. That's why it's called a federal system, that the United States basically has two ways in which power is divided. One, horizontally. So if you have a government, whether it's a state government or the federal government, the power is divided between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And then the powers are divided between the federal government and state governments too. So there are indeed some issues or some aspects or domains where states have more authority than even the federal government. And one issue is obviously education. So anyway, so the US government is, the federal level is divided into three parts or three equal branches: the president and his executive, which would include all his agencies, such as the Department of Justice, the State Department, the Department of State, or which is now called the State Department, and the Department of Defense, which is now called the Department of War, and all the other agencies that are available to the president, and all of them answer to him. So that is the executive, and then you have the Congress, and then the judiciary. So the powers of the president in the matters of foreign policy are predominant. So you can say that of all the three branches of the government, the executive branch is the most powerful when it comes to foreign policy, and often courts have confirmed this, as I will discuss when I talk about the role of the judiciary. So the president, according to the US Constitution, Article 2, is commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So the president of the US is also the head of all the military forces. The president has the authority and the power to negotiate and sign treaties. But as you will see, that treaties need to be ratified by the Senate. The president is the one who appoints ambassadors. But again, the Senate has to confirm these appointments. They can reject him if they have enough votes. But the Senate doesn't get to appoint the president, the ambassadors. The Senate does not get to negotiate any treaties. It does not sign treaties. It only confirms and ratifies. It is the president who receives ambassadors and recognizes other governments. And it is the president who leads diplomacy, including having executive relations and signing agreements with other governments. So the president is the chief diplomat, he is the commander-in-chief, he is the chief negotiator, and he is the chief, shall we say, organizer of all diplomatic activities. So these are the powers of the president as given by the US Constitution. The US Constitution gives different powers to the Congress. It's only Congress that can declare war. The president cannot declare war. The president can use force to defend the country, but he has some leeway, sometimes up to 60 days, but he has to come back to the Congress and get authorization, but he can't declare war. So the war that Donald Trump is currently waging against Iran, which has exceeded 60 days, essentially is illegal. He does not have the authority to declare war or attack another country without congressional authorization. So he basically lies to the country and to the Congress, saying that, oh, we faced imminent threat, so I had to take immediate action to defend the country. And in such a case, he's allowed a leeway of 60 days to come back and get authorization to continue with the war from the Congress. So what technically they have said is the war has ended, which it has not. The American military is still in action. It's still enforcing a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And the only reason why all this is happening is because the Congress is allowing the president to get away with violation of the Constitution. So the president cannot declare war. Only the Congress can declare the war. Only the Congress can control the funding for military and foreign aid. Only the Congress can collect money and raise money, which is impose new taxes. So, for example, Donald Trump says he wants to raise the defense budget from about $990 billion to $1.5 trillion. So he wants to raise it by close to 60%. So he can propose, but the actual raising of that money will have to be done by the Congress. The president cannot levy taxes or tariffs or customs or whatever to raise money. Now, the Congress makes rules for the armed forces. It's a Congress that regulates foreign commerce like international trade. And we saw all of this happen with Donald Trump, who tried to impose tariffs on all countries in the world and actually collected $300 billion before it went to the courts, and the courts deemed that he did not have the authority to impose tariffs. It's the congressional authority ruling. Now the Congress could give the president the authority to impose tariffs, but the Congress has not done so in the Trump's case. And Trump did not ever go to the Congress and say, please give me the authority. I need this tool to conduct foreign policy at this moment. We really need to reconstitute our supply chains, et cetera, et cetera. It's a matter of national security. He could have gone and made that appeal to the Congress. And given the fact that Republicans control both the houses, he could have got that authorization. But he chose not to do that because I guess there were not enough votes in the Senate. And then, of course, the Senate approves the treaties that the president signs. So, for example, when Obama went and made an agreement with Iran, it was called the JCPOA. It was just an agreement. It was not exactly a treaty because there were enough votes in the US Senate to get that treaty to go, because the US Senate was listening to a foreign country dictate their policy. And Israel didn't want that treaty. And therefore, because it was not a treaty, Trump was able to withdraw from the JCPOA easily. If it was a treaty, then he would have had to go to the Senate to rescind it. And then, of course, the people that Trump or the president appoints as ambassadors, they have to be confirmed again by vote in the US Senate. So the Senate and the Congress have very specific powers. They are the ones who can declare war. They control the funds and the budget of the army. They only can raise the money even when we are in a warlike situation. They make the rules for the armed forces. They regulate foreign commerce. They are the ones who confirm appointments, both cabinet as well as ambassadorial, and they are the ones who ratify treaties. Those are the rules of the Congress, and those are the powers. So while the president can use his ideas, his vision, his ideology to come up with foreign policies and grand strategies. So, for example, Obama made this decision to pivot to Asia and saying that Asia was more important now than, say, Europe. So America was going to pay more attention to what is now called the Indo-Pacific region. Now, those are his ideas. Those are Obama's ideas. For example, George W. Bush had launched and created the war on terror, for example. And Donald Trump wanted to push an America First foreign policy, which everybody has forgotten now, but that was what he was campaigning for. But the Congress can also indirectly make foreign policy. So, for example, the Congress could decide that they will give the State Department, let's say the State Department says, give us $30 billion to conduct diplomacy. So the Congress says, okay, State Department, here's 30 that you asked, and here's $20 billion more. We want you to promote gender equality worldwide, or we want you to promote recycling or respect for human rights worldwide. We're going to give you $20 billion. At the end of the year, we want a report from you as to how you spend this $20 billion. So the State Department, to get the $30 billion to pursue the president's agenda, we are going to be stuck with the $20 billion from the Congress and will have to pursue the congressional agenda. Otherwise, the Congress, if it's composed of people with integrity, would hold them accountable and say, well, we gave you $20 billion. Did you promote democracy? Did you promote human rights? Did you promote gender equality? Or whatever they had asked. They could demand anything, promote the Bible or whatever. But so that's how Congress can also make foreign policy. The Congress can pass a law saying you can't make treaties with these countries, you can't do this or that. So the Congress can have an impact directly on foreign policy priorities. And usually they do that by controlling the budget. So for example, if America wants to invade another country, they need money. And so the Congress can say that, look, we are not going to give you the money. And thereby they could simply sabotage the president's ideas and decisions to go to war by simply cutting off the funding for those wars. So yes, Congress can also make foreign policy, but a bit more indirectly. The president has at his service many agencies through which he can make and execute foreign policy. The Department of State is the primary source with which he maintains relations with other countries and also has basically shares his vision with the rest of the world. He has a Department of War now by which he can invade and defend the country and impose American sanctions, say, for example, on other countries, etc. So there are lots of institutions, the CIA, the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agencies, the Marines, the military, the State Department. All of these are executive tools that are available to the president to pursue his foreign policy agenda. The Congress can only influence them by basically loosening or tightening the budget strings. Now, the judiciary also has some powers. The judiciary claims that it can do a judicial review over foreign policy actions. So whatever the executive does, it has to be consistent with the Constitution. So, for example, if the President of the United States declares war and then goes to war, and if somebody goes to the courts can say, wait, the power to declare war does not rest with the President, it resides in the Congress. And since Congress has not done this, the President cannot do this. And this happened just recently with Donald Trump's tariff policy. The President declared an economic emergency and using a law of the 1970s, which allows the president to use the 1977, I think, Economic Emergency Powers Authorization or Act. He used that EEPA to basically impose tariffs on the rest of the world, literally terrorize the whole world for several months. But it went to courts, and the Supreme Court basically said the president does not have the constitutional authority to impose tariffs. Tariffs are a congressional power, and so since Congress had not authorized the president to do this, all of those tariffs are unconstitutional, illegal, and now the US government is returning all those tariffs that it had collected for these months. So the judiciary, according to the US Constitution, has the power to review policy and law. So if the Congress passes a law and the courts decide that they are unconstitutional, they can revoke those laws. And if the executive makes policy and if the judiciary finds that they are contravening the principles of the Constitution, they can simply say they are not valid. They interpret treaties and supreme law. So they can look at the treaties also and say whether they're consistent or not. They can limit presidential powers in foreign affairs, which they have done in many ways. But they usually try to give the president a lot of leeway on these issues. There are a few cases that are very important, but the first thing you must understand is the Constitution itself does not give the Supreme Court judicial review. It comes as a result of a very famous case in 1803 called Marbury versus Madison. So based on that case, where basically the Supreme Court said that it had the right to review policies made by the president, and for some reason we have continued to accept that as a governing principle of American jurisprudence. So there are some cases which give you an example of how the Supreme Court and the judiciary can intervene in foreign policy. There's a famous case versus Hamdan versus Rumsfeld, where Osama bin Laden's driver was being penalized and held by a system of courts called military commissions, which were created by President George W. Bush. In fact, I also did some training for the US military lawyers about Islamic law, and they were actually holding some of these prisoners that they had arrested in Afghanistan according to Islamic laws. So I remember training the American members of the military commissions about Islamic law, spent 2 days training them. Anyway, so Hamdan went to the court and he won the case, and the Supreme Court said the president does not have the authority to make courts. The Congress has. And so that's one case. There's this case of Zivotofsky versus Kerry, where this guy was born in Jerusalem, and he wanted his passport to list his birthplace as Israel. At that time, this is 2015, Israel was, at that time, the US had, even though the Congress has passed a law saying that the US should shift its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the presidents were not doing that. And so this guy sued, and the Supreme Court basically told that the president has the authority over this. Even if the Congress passes a law, he does not have to follow through because this is the executive domain. And the president is supreme when it comes to diplomacy, recognition of foreign governments, etc., based on the Constitution. Then, of course, there is the case of Trump versus Hawaii, where the Supreme Court upheld the Muslim ban after it was revised by the President Trump. And then, of course, there is this famous case that we are constantly talking about, is the tariffs. The Supreme Court has determined that the president does not have the authority to impose tariffs, and therefore he is completely overturned Donald Trump's foreign policy. In fact, it kind of neutered him by taking away his only, or his most important instrument for bullying other countries. And so the judiciary can indirectly impact policy. So it's like this: the president makes the foreign policy, the president defines what is national interest, the president then executes foreign policy. The Congress and judiciary can impact foreign policy. The Congress in a much more profound way, and the judiciary too, but they can't just make and execute foreign policy. That's the difference. So that is why the American president is primarily the main branch of the government which deals with foreign policy. In fact, some people think that the American president is essentially a glorified version of a foreign minister. So in some ways, you could say the president holds has sway over foreign affairs, whereas the Congress has sway over domestic issues. So anyway, that is how the American government is divided, and then that is how, when we talk about domestic sources of American foreign policy, there are the governmental and the societal ones. The societal sources are the media, the ideology, the political culture, the public opinion, the role of interest groups, think tanks, and lobbies. And when it comes to the government sources, it's obviously the president and his executive branch, the Congress and the judiciary. These are the domestic sources of American foreign policy. So thank you for watching Khanversations. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, press the bell icon, and share this video with everybody else. And if you're watching this video as part of the American Foreign Policy Class 313 or even 813, then do read the readings that are associated with this video. Take care.